Computer, write me an iRobot script. Let's do this again. iRobots is an adaptation of children's author Isaac Asimov's story, I, Robot. Or so that's what everyone keeps saying. But today I'm here to correct that notion and hopefully set the record straight because it is not an adaptation. Simply put, it's classic Hollywood slapping the name of a well-known IP onto a script that has nothing to do with it in order to sell more tickets. Hey, welcome to the channel where I go over the ideas and events that inspire movies. Today I'll be looking at 2004's I, Robot. In order to clear up this mess, I think it's easier to go over the 2004 version first and then bring in Asimov's version second. For full transparency, a lot of the information I pulled was conveniently laid out in this single interview. Anyways, iRobot from 2004 was written by Jeff Vintar under the original title of Hardwired. Hardwired was a story about a detective named Del Spooner who is called to the site of a murder by the dead man's hologram. He finds himself involved in a mystery where all suspects are robots, cyborgs, computers, and holograms. Vintar goes on to say that it primarily took place in one setting, on one floor, in one high-tech building. He described it as an Agatha Christie style of mystery that was self-contained, almost like a stage play. As we all know, the final product obviously deviates, but the core mystery basically stayed the same. Now, onto Isaac Asimov. According to Wikipedia, Isaac Asimov's stories originally appeared in the American magazines Super Science Stories and Astounding Science Fiction between 1940 and 1950. These short stories were eventually compiled together and published in 1950 as well. They were strung together by a loose narrative that followed a Dr. Susan Calvin as she's being interviewed at the end of her robotics career by a young reporter who's listening to her various stories regarding the developments of the robots throughout the years, starting from the primitive functioning robots up to robots that are indistinguishable from humans. Although the anthology itself was rich in content, not a single story was used as the basis for the 2004 blockbuster movie. The story Little Lost Robot was used in a scene and it was probably one of the more memorable bits of the movie, but it wasn't part of the original spec script. Back to Vintar, interest in the script began to grow in the mid to late 90s, but the studios thought that the story was small in scope. A mystery confined to a single room wasn't cinematic. It wasn't long before Vintar was asked to produce draft after draft while the project passed between different studios. It was development hell. It changed so much that one of the drafts apparently was a group of Marines going to a space station to battle a monster. What? In 1999, Fox wanted to do a robot film and acquired the rights for Hardwired, and within the same time frame they acquired the rights to Asimov's I, Robot. They went back to the original spec script with two requests: to expand it further beyond the four walls and incorporate iRobot in it somehow. So Jeff went back to work again. He applied the three laws and changed some names around along with character traits, and that's really about it, he says. Now on to the early 2000s, Will Smith gets attached to the project as executive producer and lead actor. In his role of executive producer, Will Smith brought on Akiva Goldsman to shape the script into more of a Will Smith vehicle and sprinkled a little bit of action than was originally written. I think it's funny that a lot of people bring up that Will Smith complained that he gets to save the world in every movie he does, but they don't mention the fact that he literally hires the guy that ends up writing the final draft of him saving the world.
The way that the film is, he wanted to have a solid acting performance. He didn't want the Will Smith performance.
And you're the executive producer as well?
Yes.
What was your motivation?
Well, there were ideas that I saw in the script and in the shorts that I wanted to be able to have the freedom to be able to implement into the story. So, essentially I told him I would be happy to sign on to the script, but I needed to have the producer capacity in order to be able to affect the change that I wanted.
And when I came on to the film, the first official act for me was to hire my buddy Akiva Goldsman to come in and do the rewrite. And I just think he did a brilliant job with it. I think he's genius, and I think what he captured has set a new bar for what action movies need to be.
In the same interview, Jeff Vintar recollects, At some point, Will Smith became interested and Akiva came on to do the Will Smith rewrites, meaning that he took the film even further in the direction of a Will Smith event film. So Akiva came in and really opened it up further, really created a sense that we're not just solving this murder mystery and we're not just saving the city, we're saving the world. So the script takes place on a larger scale. And I know I'm dunking on Will Smith a little bit, but he was actually the best thing in the movie. Wait, second best.
You know, you mentioned iRobot. Mm-hmm. They were doing test audiences with the movie, and they score the characters in this kind of test audience. And I got word back, Alan, you're testing higher than
Will Smith. Nice.
And then I was gone. I was done. There was no publicity, and my name was not mentioned.
Shitting on the little guy.
At the very least, he was the best thing off screen. And I say that because director Alex Proyas has made it clear that he was mistreated by the studio, and Will Smith offered a sense of comfort or relief that helped him get through production.
When we were doing iRobot, we took iRobot on a junket all over the world. I was very, very lucky and privileged to have the studio. At one time, the studio actually, they almost made it up to me. They not quite, but almost, because that was a pretty horrid experience from a studio point of view. Because my relationship with the studio was so strained and so unpleasant on that film. I literally every day I would think about walking off the project. It was just made so unpleasant. But then I and I also had the misfortune, I think, of working with one of the worst studio regimes at the time in terms of micromanagement, right? And so suddenly I had the studio, multiple people from the studio breathing down my neck at every stage. And actually I was being constantly challenged creatively and having to constantly challenge the studio on a budgetary level, actually to save the film money. If Will hadn't been on that film and I'd had someone who was less enjoyable to be making the film with, I may have actually walked off that film. That's how far they pushed me during the production.
Released on July 16th, 2004, iRobot runs 115 minutes and carries a PG-13 rating for intense, stylized action and brief, partial nudity, and falls into the action, mystery, sci-fi, and thriller genres. Produced on a $120 million budget, the film opened with $52 million, landing at number 1 in the box office ahead of Spider-Man 2 and Anchorman. Interestingly enough, iRobot and Spider-Man 2 would eventually square off again at the Oscars for the Best Visual Effects Award. It went on to earn $144 million domestically and internationally, earning $208 million, bringing its worldwide total to $353 million. Critically, the response was mixed. Rotten Tomatoes has the critics at 57%, with the audience at a 70% rating. Metacritic has it at a 59, IMDb 7.1 out of 10, and Letterboxd a 3.2. There's just nothing significant here. Pretty standard for a popcorn flick. Roger Ebert did review the film, echoing my thoughts, stating, "The plot is simple-minded and disappointing, and the chase and action scenes are pretty much routine for movies in the sci-fi CGI genre." Although the movie is not part of the Asimov universe, there's one thing curious about it. Asimov's stories are mainly about the 3 laws and the various tests Calvin does to stress test them. So when injecting Asimov into Vintar's Hardwired, it just made sense. If Asimov's stories were about solving robot problems and Vintar's story was about a robot mystery that needed to be solved, then it just makes sense to marry them together. The issue is that Asimov wrote the stories as a way to show that robots are not evil entities, and the 2004 movie completely ignores that. Well, gotta have a blockbuster one way or another, right? The studio wanted to make an anthology of the iRobot's name, but nothing ever came of it. Will Smith was born on September 25th, 1968 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Will Smith plays the role of Detective Del Spooner, a detective who distrusts robots and is set forth to solve the death of a scientist. Prior to iRobot, he was in Men in Black 2 in 2002, followed by Bad Boys 2 in 2003. Afterwards, he was in Shark Tale in 2004 and Hitch in 2005. Bridget Moynihan was born on April 28, 1971 in Binghamton, New York. Bridget plays the role of Dr. Susan Calvin, a robot psychologist who assists Spooner in his quest to solve the mystery. Prior to iRobot, she was in The Sum of All Fears in 2002 and The Recruit in 2003. Afterwards, she was in Lord of War in 2005, followed by Grey Matters in 2006. Alan Tudyk was born on March 16, 1971 in El Paso, Texas. Alan Tudyk voices Sonny, a robot that is suspected of a crime and possesses unique qualities. Prior to iRobot, he lent his voice to Ice Age in 2002. In 2004, he had a string of movies which were Dodgeball, iRobot, and Meat Market. Afterwards, he was in RX in 2005. Director Alex Proyas was born on September 23, 1963 in Alexandria, Egypt. I usually keep the filmography list to 2 before and 2 after, but I'll make an exception this time. Prior to iRobot, he directed The Crow in 1994, Dark City in 1998, and Garage Days in 2002. After iRobot, he directed Knowing in 2009 and Gods of Egypt in 2016. Finally, here are other movies that some of the actors shared the screen in, and subscribe.
And you two motherfuckers need Jesus.
Crate Tech with your microbots or anything else.
Hero, I'm offering you more money than any 14-year-old.